Hi, this presentation is on desertification. What is it and what can we do about it? My name is Carrie McAllister and I'll be presenting this to you today. Desertification has become a major environmental issue in scientific, political, and even general public circles, and the term captures a sense of moving deserts, drying lakes, and starving people. The international community has long recognized that desertification is the most important economic, social, and environmental problem of concern to many countries in all regions on the planet. Now, on the brink of desertification, farmers are changing their methods of planting crops in order to defeat drought conditions. Desertification is the process which turns productive land into non-productive desert as a result of poor land management. Desertification occurs mainly in semi-arid to arid lands, which average annual rainfall is less than 600 millimeters or 24 inches of rain, bordering on deserts. To give you a comparable example, here in the United States, the average rainfall in Kansas is just a little below 24 inches, whereas Hawaii's annual rainfall is 63 inches. On a worldwide scale, about 1/3 of the world is arid to semi-arid land that's at risk for desertification. The World Atlas of Desertification, which summarizes the current state of scientific knowledge on the dry lands of the globe, assesses that more than 6.1 billion hectares of land, that's 47.2% of the Earth's land surface, is dry land. There are areas experiencing pressures on the environment caused by human mismanagement. These problems have already been subject to recurrent drought. However, studies show that as much as 2 billion hectares of degraded land and forests globally has the potential for restoration. Now, a little bit about the history of desertification. The world is experiencing a dramatic increase of human interference with nature. This is mainly due to the rapid technological advances, which enables man to inflict major changes on natural systems in a short amount of time. Vegetation, soil, and climate are the main components of the environment that are being affected. Now, something that I found interesting is that we are now living in an era during which man has for the first time succeeded in modifying the climate. Now, if you think about it, desertification has been around since the beginning of time, right? Well, the rate has remained unchanged until only within the last 100 years that humans are actually exacerbating the process. If we don't do something to take steps now, our resources will be depleted and human life will be hard to sustain. About half of southern Africa is semi-arid. This puts it at risk for desertification, but efforts are being made to help Africans learn about the effects of overgrazing on their lands, and also they are teaching them farming practices that are sustainable and productive. In order to make room for farming arable land, the compression of flocks into even smaller and more arid regions contributes to soil degradation and desertification. It's estimated that 73% of the world's grazing land has so deteriorated that it's lost at least 25% of its animal carrying capacity. Part of this problem here in America is the Western style cattle grazing is based on intensification, standardization, and individual land ownership. Now, many policies from developing world governments are geared towards these practices. Also, the demands for pastures for cultivators are growing, and 2/3 of the world's agricultural land is already given to our livestock pastures. When livestock occupy slopes in abandoned fields, the livestock overgraze the land and cause the inability of vegetation to maintain its resiliency, and therefore that leads to desertification. In soil, it's left unprotected and erosion degrades it rather quickly. Now, erosion rates are highest in Asia, Africa, and South America, estimated at typically 30 to 40 tons per hectare annually. Worldwide, an estimated 12 million hectares of croplands fall out of use for this reason each year. The abandonment of marginal agricultural lands in particular reduces land resource productivity and scales up food insecurity. This leads to a widening food gap in general. Now, salinization is when groundwater has too much salt in it, and the extraction of groundwater from coastal aquifers frequently results in the intrusion of seawater into them. The use of these waters has quickly damaged the soils and reduced their productivity on many occasions. There's also something called secondary salinization, which is caused by the irrational application of irrigation, such as the use of water with elevated soluble salt content and the failure to meet the leaching requirements. In recent decades, for the first time in history, increased yields have been achieved largely through intensified farming, rather by being an extension of tilled land. Sustained by chemical fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation, and mechanization, the use of a few high-yield crop varieties has developed and spread, contributing to an enterprise known generically as the Green Revolution. While the Green Revolution was not all good, it spread a farming method that relies heavily on chemical fertilizers, monocultural cropping practices, and decreased fallow times. This, coupled with more intensive plowing, has led to desertification. To recap, the contributors of desertification include biophysical features, which are degradation, water consumption, salinization, loss of organic substance, and contamination. The socioeconomic contributors are rapid technological advance, the mechanization of agriculture, abandonment of land, and overgrazing. We also have geomorphic factors such as steep slopes, loss of plant cover, erosion, and deforestation. Now, farmers are changing their practices in order to combat desertification. Most people agree that desertification is irreversible. This is due to the extremely expensive nature of techniques used to reverse desertification, which has already occurred. For this reason, much of the discussion on combating desertification is based on prevention rather than rehabilitation. There are several land management techniques which we can use to halt desertification. We also need policy regulations towards the sustainability of land resources. Public awareness activities aiming at improving the level of perception on the existing threat and at securing public consent and support for the action. We need technical actions such as soil and water conservation practices and works, forest protection and expansion, soil reclamation and irrigation, protection of natural ecosystems, and drought mitigation. We could also include research and development. As I mentioned before, the effects of nitrogen in the soil. Organic or non-chemical farming practices could be used. And we also need to use managed free-range grazing. Now you may be asking, take part in the activities of conservation groups. You may be able to find local groups by visiting Meetup or contacting your local farmers cooperative. Buy organic and local. This reduces the commercial farming industry's inefficient practice of farming the land and puts production in the hands of non-chemical, sustainable farming practices. Buy free-range meat, or you can hunt for your meat. And last, you can bring overgrazing and land mismanagement to the attention of the Directorate of Resource Conservation. Its address is included below. Desertification assessments around the globe show the importance of the problem and the necessity of mitigating the environmental, economic, and social problems. The threat of climate change and the indication of deeper and more sustained future droughts may make the problem even worse.